and welcome to the Strategy Sessions. My name is Andy Jarvis from Eximo Marketing, and I am your host, the mouthpiece of this podcast. Thank you for joining me. This podcast has been in the planning for a little while, and I'm really pleased that it's now finally seeing the light of day. What a show we've got lined up for you. So I'll tell you a little bit about how the show is going to run, and then next time you listen, it'll be much shorter. We'll just get straight into the action. But the Strategy Sessions is pretty much a marketing mixtape. We're going to have 3 sections to it. The first one is going to be an interview with an expert. This week, we've got Jen Hoffman. Jen is a SaaS marketer and a real dynamo of a person. Just brilliant energy about her. So Jen's going to be the first part of the show. An amazing interview where we dive into all sorts of elements. We talk about people development. We talk about marketing. We talk about culture. There's a lot to dig into and a lot to unpack. A really great interview coming up for you in a moment. On the back of that, I'm going to talk to you, have a discussion section, a debate section. It depends on what's happening in marketing at the minute. Sometimes I'm going to rant and rave. Sometimes I'm going to share best practice, things I do with clients. This week, I'm going to start off with something I do with clients. It's a way to be able to decide if you should launch a new channel. We'll talk about it through the lens of TikTok because I think it's relevant at the minute, but it is useful for any channel. If somebody wants you to launch a new channel, listen to this section. There's some practical tips that you can take away and use in your business to help you decide if that's what you want to do. And then right at the end, we're going to have a section called T.O.P.T.I.P or T.O.P.T.I.P. Where we've got some amazing marketers from all around the world who are going to share a 60-second top tip. And again, a bit you can just dive in, dip in, listen to that 60-second tip and go, all right, okay, I can take that back and use it. Now, this is a marketing podcast. So those tips are going to be segmented. Not every tip is going to be perfectly applicable to everybody. The first 10, 15 seconds, they're going to tell you who it's for. It might be for SaaS marketers. It might be for people doing Google Ads at a certain level. It could be for people doing e-commerce on MailChimp. Whatever it is, have a listen and you'll see if it's for you. And even if it's not for you, just have a listen. It's 60 seconds and then you might learn something new from somebody who really knows what they're talking about. So that's how the show is going to be put together, that marketing mixtape approach, 3 sections each week, interview, discussion/debate, and then the top tip section towards the end. Thank you for coming along with me on this show. This is the very first one. We're going to be out every fortnight on a Tuesday, and we're going to stick with that rhythm all the way through, and we're going to hopefully do a full year's worth of podcasts. There, I've said it, so I'm going to have to do it now. So, without any further ado, let me introduce Jen Hoffman. Jen is an American who's based in London, who I first met at digital marketing conferences. She worked for an SEO tool and was a bit of a regular on the conference circuit. Her or her team would speak at various events. I speak at quite a few events. Do you remember when we used to have them? Yeah, a lot of people, 2,000 people in a room, stood close to each other, handshaking, hugging, coughing on each other, drinking beers. Oh, halcyon days. They'll come back. But no, I met Jen at these events. I met a team and was always really impressed, not just with her, but with the team as well. And I always think you can judge a person by the team they build around them. And if that is the case, then Jen must be one of the best because the team she had around her was fantastic. Anyway, enough of me waffling. You haven't come here for this, for me giving you long intros. You've come here to listen to Jen. And here we go. This is what we talked about when we met last week. So today I'd like to welcome Jen Hoffman to the show. When I saw Jen had been described as an aggressive female, an American and a redhead, I thought, wow, this is the sort of guest we need on the Strategy Sessions. Jen, how are you?
I am fantastic. How are you? How are you holding up during the current time?
Oh, it's great. More time at home, more time cooking, more time out running. I'm pretending it's great, making the best of a bad situation. What about you? I see you're running, drinking, and eating, as well as a bit of work, obviously.
I mean, what more can one do currently, right?
All of the good stuff. We may get a chance to talk about cocktail making and tequila later on. We may. And we may also ask you what your favorite cocktail is at the end, but we'll stick to that for the quickfire questions. All right?
Perfect.
But first, I want to get right into it because you wrote a blog post on Medium, which I will put in the link to the show notes. And that's where I picked up that intro from. You've been described previously, what was it, an aggressive female, an American and a redhead. And you talk quite honestly and candidly about your experiences of being seen as aggressive and fiery in business. Can you explain, first of all, the Scarlet Letter concept, because that's what the blog's called, and then just talk me through about kind of your experiences in the last few years?
Yeah, of course. So the Scarlet Letter dates way back. And effectively, it was a book that was written. And within that book, there was a woman named Hester Prynne. And basically, she commits what's considered adultery at the time because she's unaware that her husband effectively has departed, but he comes back, and she basically gets labeled as this adulteress. But effectively, she embraced it in the capacity that she wore a scarlet letter on her jacket, on her overcoat, and she embraced it, and she effectively really just staked her claim and said, "This is who I am. I didn't do anything with any ill intention." And she was effectively the one who was named and shamed, and not the other party involved in the act, if you will. Mm-hmm. As the single solitary female, she was named and shamed, as she was paraded out in front of the entirety of the community. And again, she turned it around, and she could have succumbed to that and said, it's going to break her, or she could have just gone and hid. She could have, really allowed it to, like I said, break her as a human and as a female, but she didn't. She flipped it around, and she actually utilized it as a source of empowerment. And she owned it to the fullest extent. And for me, I guess that type of story it resonates in a way where in today's day and age, unfortunately, we as females are still fighting to get to the top. There's still a mass discrepancy in the number of women who sit in executive leadership positions at Fortune 500 companies and all the way down. There's a huge conversation being had right now around women leaders in politics, especially given the current pandemic that we're all dealing with. Watching countries such as New Zealand and Germany come out on top, being run by women leaders. So for me, I've really embraced that, and it's taken me quite a bit of time in my career to really say, actually, there is a mass discrepancy, and a lot of the traits that I've been labeled are actually the same exact traits that I've watched men in my career own and been referred to as. But yet the moment that I express them, or the moment that I exhibit those same traits as a female, then it's negative. It's no longer positive. And so I just decided that's something negative, and I've been labeled aggressive, but you know what? I'm going to wear it with pride, and I am absolutely going to embrace it. And I'm not going to allow that to break me and my spirit, my character. And it's definitely not going to deter me from achieving the goals that I set out to achieve, both personally and professionally.
Brilliant. I mean, there is a long history of people taking effectively insults and abuse and turning it around and owning it, from the term queer, which became the kind of the name that the gay community in America owned first and then spread everywhere else. Yep. And even if you only have to listen to rap music in America, or any music a lot of music coming out of America from the black population. I never thought I'd say nigger on a podcast, but yep, there you go. And which has been picked up and owned to take the power and take the terms away from the influence from it. So I love the fact that you're owning it and going after it. But that doesn't make it easy. Owning it is kind of step one, isn't it? And you're right that discrepancy between male traits of aggressiveness and dominance and assertive, suddenly when it's a female who exhibits that, it's a problem for the organization. Given the fact that you're a senior marketer in lots of places, and do you feel it's held your career back being attributed to these negative traits?
I have to admit, I never thought that it had. For me, I never really experienced it. And so therefore it just wasn't front of mind for me until more recently than not. Again, as I sort of outline in that Medium blog post there. And then I really when you're faced with this new scenario in front of you that you've never experienced historically, it also causes you to reflect historically back on other times in your career, and you start to question, actually, was that a situation where I was just blind to the fact that it was happening because it hadn't previously happened to me in such a direct way? So I think that I'm a lot more aware of it now, as to what I was in earlier days in my career. But yes, I absolutely feel as though it obviously has happened to me, and unfortunately, it took me having that experience and me writing that letter to really understand the full extent as to how many women in my network actually do experience this.
And you've had a lot of people reach out to you following that, because I think it must be a fairly common experience that, go-getting woman comes up against sensitive male ego and loses that battle because the male ego is unfortunately in a position of power, and the female is on a way up. So you've had a lot of people reach out to you. Has it surprised you how many people have reached out to you?
Overwhelming doesn't even begin to describe. And I came away from the feedback and the response of that blog post in two different mindsets. On one, I actually felt empowered to continue to tell my story and to continue to actually advocate for women, and I never intended to actually be sort of the catalyst for really driving a big conversation, especially inside of the search marketing community. But then I was also very, very, very heartbroken, because on the flip side, a lot of the messages that I was getting and private direct messages were from women that said, I just want you to know how much I love and embrace that blog post. That is me, but I can't publicly like or comment on your blog post because it will internally cause political issues for me at my company.
No way.
It was heartbreaking. I had so many of those women. And it just really made me feel sound that I had made the right decision to write that blog post, because I never wanted to be a martyr for this. I never actually wanted to be the poster child of speaking out about this, but I really even questioned writing it. And then even after I wrote it, I even questioned hitting publish on that. And I kind of crowdsourced the way that I normally do when I'm second guessing myself. And so many people, both men and women, said, you have to write that, you have to post that. And again, after having so many messages from women saying like, thank you for writing this, I wish I could publicly comment, but I can't for these reasons, it just substantiated how I probably should have written that earlier.
Yeah. And it's such a shame that we're looking here in 2020 that this is still a discussion that we're having. But yeah. I know from when I've talked about kind of subtle racial abuse that I've got, and people look at me and say, oh, well, it's not the same because it's not the 1980s and people are chasing you down the street, abusing you, that you should just somehow get over it. And you go, no, this is, I think it's more pernicious because it's not there. If somebody stood over the street shouting abuse at you or in an office abusing you, everybody can see that and you can deal with it. But when it's just this unseen, pernicious glass ceiling, whatever you want to call it, when it's there and you can't talk about it, and when you do talk about it, you're kind of like, oh, trouble causer. It's awful. So
it's oppressive.
Yeah, definitely. And it becomes harder to fight that way because you can't talk about it, even though you flagged up for talking about it.
Well, the problem is that psychologically, it breaks you down. That level of oppression, when something isn't out into the public domain where it can be seen and addressed, psychologically, the person that is the victim and taking on that abuse, they start to question a lot of other aspects about themselves and their life. And then that becomes that domino impact, right? Psychologically, from that one instance of abuse that is underlying and gone unseen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But here's a question, and it may be an unfair question to ask, I'm not sure, but every study that you see come out shows that diversity in top teams, or diversity everywhere in an organization, but especially at top teams, helps to improve performance. So whether that's performance in terms of financial results or efficiencies or whatever, having a diversity of thought on the top team helps. It's not just helpful, it's critical. Yet in so many teams, we don't see it. What's holding that back, in your opinion?
Egos. It's in my
no
opinion,
further questions, Your Honor.
in my opinion, it's egos, and I believe that egos stem from insecurities. That is obvious, like a whole barrel of monkeys that we don't have time to get into today. But statistically speaking, there's been so much research done about the high performance of teams that are diverse, and diverse not only from male versus female, but also sexual orientation, cultural diversity. You have so much opportunity to bring to the table within diversification different viewpoints based off of different upbringings, different experiences that these people have brought with them through their life to this table, right? And that data actually proves that, and it shows that the more diverse a team actually is, the higher performing that they are. And fundamentally, at the end of the day, the more profitable those organizations end up being. If you actually step back, I believe it was in January, it was Goldman Sachs that officially said, we will no longer support and facilitate IPOs or backing of organizations that do not have a diverse board, full stop. Mm-hmm. And I think that it is an immense step forward, but I think it is definitely still going to be a slow go forward, excuse me. But at the end of the day, it's mind-boggling to me because the data is there, and we live in a data-driven world, especially as marketers. So mm-hmm. How are we denying what the data is saying and still going forward and building very narrow and shallow executive leadership teams built of elitism?
There's part of me can at least understand how the problem starts. And if you're in a startup, there's a lot of effort and there's a lot of extra hours and discretionary effort put into building a startup. And you need to trust everybody who you work with to make sure everyone's doing it. And you tend to do that by starting off by employing people who you know or buddying up with people you've met. So you immediately start to do that, which then means as you grow and you start to explode from being just a startup pre-revenue to being a startup, all your top team probably all went to the same school or you all used to work in the same place. And I understand how that starts because it starts from a good place of we've got to get this product off the ground and I need to trust these people. But when you get to that stage, I don't understand how it doesn't just become like, why do we need more people around the room looking like us? Why doesn't at that stage it just open out to be more about diversity? I just don't understand. Aunt Jen, sort the world out.
I think actually it's about being conscious to the problem, right? If you're not aware that problem fundamentally exists and you're not aware that at that point in your journey as a startup, you need to be conscious of diversifying your workforce and the people that you're employing, then you're never going to, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that we're in a really interesting point in business in general, and as fundamentally Gen Z coming into the workforce, right? So they want to work for an organization where their values are aligned with that organization's values, right? And so there's so much more emphasis being put on culture. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're building a culture like for like, because it's human nature to immediately be drawn to what and who you are as your makeup and somebody and groups or communities of similar interests, you're going to keep continuing to attract those types of people, and you're going to continue to hire those types of people. But if you're conscious to the fact that you need to diversify your organization, then you'll be conscious to hiring people that sit outside of your generational, racial, and cultural makeup. Mm-hmm. There's actually a woman who I've been connected with on social for quite some time, Shuri Atchison, and she's actually was just hired.
I know Shuri.
So
she's from Northern Ireland.
6 months ago by Monzo Bank here in the UK to actually lead their diversity and inclusion initiatives. And I think that is what we need more of, and that's what we will continue to see more of as just business in general, business operations continue to evolve. I think actually Gen Z will really drive a large majority of that. So I'm curious to see kind of where that all goes, but it starts with being conscious that the problem exists in the first place.
And just to reiterate, when I introduced Jen as an American, clearly she is. So for the listeners in the UK and Ireland, that's Generation Z, and for everyone else in North America, Gen Z. But that's fine. We can move on from that. So in terms of having, in terms of having diverse teams, you've said obviously it's important. You've recruited some brilliant people. I've had the pleasure of meeting some of them and reading some of the things that they've put together. What's your approach? How did you put together such a great team, or what do you look for when you're putting together great teams?
So I am a recruiter's absolute nightmare. And the reason why I say that, and that's both internal as well as external recruiters as nightmare, because I, up until quite recently, had a struggle actually articulating what it was I was explicitly looking for. And as a matter of fact, I wrote another blog post on Medium about this. So if you want to go back and reference that, Andy, you can.
Yep.
But for me, I'm of the belief system that I would much rather hire somebody who has the right personality and the right work ethic over, above, and beyond the most brilliant skill set against the job spec, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I fundamentally would prefer to teach somebody the skills that they need to do the job, but I can't actually teach somebody how to take initiative. I can't teach somebody to be passionate about the work that they do. I can't teach somebody good work ethic, especially because I prefer to be in fast growing or high growth startups. Mm-hmm. So as yourself as well, you probably can relate, where you have to be super lean with the resources that you have, and you have to move fast. So I unfortunately don't have time to teach somebody how to have good work ethic. I need somebody who can come in, hit the ground running, and just sprint with me. But again, that takes hyper curiosity. It takes passion for the work that they're doing. And most importantly, it takes initiative and knowing how to take initiative in that type of an environment. So I think that is why I am a recruiter's nightmare, because they're like, what are you looking for? And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. I'm somebody who can have a conversation with a candidate, and within 5 minutes, I immediately know if this person's going to work out for my team or not. I think I hired every single one of my staff at my previous company and on my high performing team. And I've heard a lot of people actually complain about the Gen Z generation coming into the workforce, or millennials normally is the tag or the label. But every single one of mine were nearly 20 somethings. And they were such a high performing team that at the end of the day, I was asked by the business to stop increasing their targets because the rest of the business needed to keep up. And that stems from, they were always really passionate about the work that they did. They were super curious about learning new things and educating themselves. And they took initiative when there was a problem or there was an opportunity. They just decided to dive right in and get it done, as opposed to waiting for permission or bowling it over and just delaying the process. They just jumped right in, which again, you can't teach those things.
So how do you, I know you said you're a recruiter's nightmare, but the general recruitment process for lots of places is, send us a CV, send us a cover letter, fill in this application form, that sort of approach, right?
Yep.
Which tends to rule out, and because you often get far more CVs than you can ever really go through, there's a bar set. So, you might have to have a degree, you might have to have done 5 years, you might have to, whatever it is. And I'm not criticizing companies for doing that. But how do you get the people who've maybe got that, the personality you're looking for, or the street smart, or just that work ethic? How can they get through that filter process to get to interview? Because the interview process, obviously, you see kids coming out of private schools who just get to interview all the time because they've got everything on paper. Yep. How do you get around that?
So I actually skip all of the work experience. I skip all of the educational experience, and I immediately go to the bottom of the CV, where it addresses somebody's hobbies, activities, additional certifications, or additional education outside of the normal structured education system. And I take a look at what makes them tick. I take a look at what their passions are and their hobbies are. And somebody who has either a very, very lean section or just no section at all, says to me that they probably don't take initiative and they're not curious in life in general. So I'm going to give a lot less weight or clout to that person in my interview process, as opposed to somebody who tells me about the fact that they're teaching themselves a new language, or somebody whose hobbies include cooking, or something that gives me a little bit more texture and color around who that person is, as opposed to just what their work history or school and education background looks like.
Okay. So, and if somebody's good at making cocktails, that obviously stacks up as a.
That means you get a double check in my book. You get like basically expedited to the top of the pile. No, that's
I like it. It seems like a good title. What is your favorite cocktail?
Okay. So, first and foremost, I am a Gemini, which means that I have two distinct, differing personalities that are always in contention with one another. Okay. And my cocktail choices are also the same. So anyone who knows me knows that I am a huge tequila fan. Shout out to the Patron team, because my epic Shanoa Johnson works there. But then also too, I am a huge bourbon and Woodford fan. So those are my two differing drinks, if you will. So obviously on the tequila Patron side of things, it's a margarita. And then over on the bourbon Woodford side of things, it's an old fashioned.
Gotcha. Okay. Nice little segue there. There's probably people screaming, going, right, we're 20 minutes in, Jarvis, and you haven't really asked a question about marketing yet. But look, I'm happy with the way this is going. So to your day job, effectively, you are a SaaS marketer, not SasS-y, although you may well be a SasS-y marketer. I don't know, but SaaS marketing, software as a service. Talk to me. Tell me what SaaS marketing is.
SaaS marketing is a very interesting, complex business, whereby it's become the new B2B platform, if you will. And it's only really evolved, obviously, over the last, give or take, 20 years with the internet and the digital ecosystem, and a lot of advancements with the cloud and things of that nature. For me, being a B2B SaaS marketer specifically, rather than B2C SaaS, is that there's a lot of noise out there. There is so many different types of SaaS platforms in the marketplace now. How do you differentiate yourself? So it's all well and good that you can hit all of your SaaS metrics and that you can achieve your MRR and your ARR and your customer acquisition costs and a lot of the traditional metrics by which any other business is measured, but you live and die by those metrics, especially because a large majority of SaaS businesses are VC backed. Most of the time. I'm not saying all of the time, but literally those metrics, you live and die by them as an organization. So for me as a marketer, if I'm not obsessed over our revenue metrics, then I'm not doing my job correctly. Those revenue metrics are no longer just the sole responsibility of the finance team and the sales head, but they're now the marketer's responsibility, especially in a SaaS world. But I think also too, to pivot from that, you also have to say, how do I stand out from the crowd with so many SaaS businesses? So how can you actually employ brand marketing, and how can you effectively build a strong brand that your customers want to be loyal to in a day and age where, anyone can spin up a new SaaS business thanks to AWS and Google Cloud in their mom's basement, right?
Yeah. And SaaS marketing is probably, it's a bit of a clumsy generalization, but because it's a monthly or annual recurring revenue product, it's software based. So the cost of adding each user is not, it does not correlate with the cost of servicing that user. So they're adding stacks of money per month or per year for very little incremental cost. So it's a really good business to get in, which is why everybody wants to be in SaaS marketing at the minute. Build a product, exponential growth. Here we go. It's a great revenue model. But that brings numerous other challenges. You talked about brand building, which to digital marketers, I often rail and say anyone with digital in the title doesn't know anything about marketing. And I'm being a little bit provocative there, but what I mean by that is that they don't seem to understand that brand marketing still has a place in a world of performance marketing. And you touched on it there. So how difficult do you find it getting marketers and companies to invest in brand when all they want to do is invest in performance marketing metrics?
So that is actually really interesting because I'm a marketer that actually started with a little bit of a sales background. So I think that's why I fundamentally understand the importance of focusing on the revenue metrics, not just my marketing metrics. But I'm a true believer that you cannot have one without the other. Performance marketing doesn't work without brand because at the end of the day, such as in the pandemic right now, it is your brand that is going to carry you through this thing. And it's going to allow your organization to not only survive, but to thrive on the back end. But at the end of the day, your brand doesn't have purpose, and effectively you have no brand if you don't have performance marketing metrics that are effectively driving that revenue. So you have to literally be balancing them both at the same time and fundamentally investing both. And I think that the challenge that a lot of marketers have around having the argument or essentially stating their case for the necessity around brand is because they just haven't been able to articulate it in a way that makes sense to the board. I'll never forget a conversation with one of my previous bosses who just didn't understand the benefits or the reasons why me and my marketing team were out and about speaking on stages around the world on a regular basis. And he said, it's just easy to throw that up to brand, right? And I said, absolutely, because I cannot quantify the ROI against me going to a conference and speaking on that stage. I mean, there are some ways that I could drive revenue attribution for that, but it's really difficult and cumbersome. But at the end of the day, the more and more he actually started to see the method to my madness, and he started to actually watch that brand grow. And some of the metrics that I put in place to monitor, such as social growth. So what's the size of your network? Database growth, right? So how large are you effectively growing that business's community is all a direct result of you growing that brand.
Yeah.
And I think that is the argument that has to be put on the table for marketers if they really want to ensure that they're getting the viable resource and budget to put into brand marketing.
Yeah, and I can understand the pressures of, performance marketing it's like a drug, right? It has a particular approach of like, well, you spend X and you get 7X back, or you spend, and it's perfect. And it's sort of bottom of funnel conversion based. Yeah, tangible. And you go, well, we spent this, we got that, everybody goes away happy. And it's a language everybody can understand. But all you're doing is almost storing up problems for the future. And I think there's partly because a lot of marketers don't stay in role too long. They just hammer on the performance metrics, move on 3, 4, 5 years later and worry about it another time. But rather than me ranting on just about performance marketing, one of the things I think about SaaS marketing that seems to be, from the companies I've looked at and a few companies I've worked with, is that the 4 Ps of marketing, product, price, place, promotion, often get pulled apart and not owned by marketing. Promotion, marketing. Yeah. But product, no. There's a chief product officer, there's a product team, there's engineers who do product. Yep. Pricing, no, that's not marketing. That's done over here. That's place is a little bit different because it's all sold online, right? But what's your experience of that in SaaS marketing? Is it exploded in different? How does marketing stay relevant to those bits? Talk me through that.
So I think the really interesting thing with obviously the development of SaaS businesses in general has, I think, led the charge for the evolution of the marketing role inside of organizations. And so what it is that everything coming online right now, everything coming online, but it puts the marketer at the central point inside of the organization because we are the ones effectively that are on the front lines having conversations with not only consumers, but with prospective consumers. And that historically has only been the job of the sales team per se, right? The account management team. But I think that the marketing team and the senior marketer has actually become that pivotal point where they are the feedback loop from the market, the industry, into the rest of the business. They become the voice for everything external. I mean, we have all of our social media monitoring tools. So we now not only can monitor our individual markets, we can monitor all of our customers. We can monitor all of our target customers. We can also monitor what's going on in surrounding industries that potentially have a knock-on impact into ours, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have the abilities of actually garnering all of that from a social perspective. We garner everything from a press and PR perspective. So what are journalists actually saying about the market? And we can feed that back into sales. We feed that back into customer success or account management, however you define that. We feed that back into product, and we feed that back into engineering, right? And I think that SaaS has allowed marketers to actually be that pivotal point. Because also too, if you think about where SaaS originally started, as these super small one-man band lean startup organizations, where you have to do as much as you possibly can with absolutely minimal resource, right? So all of a sudden you have this person that has ample amounts of data at their fingertips. How do you leverage that data to inform larger business decisions across the board?
Mm-hmm. And as you know, there's a business growth element in there as well. So as businesses grow, there's always friction. I always think that as a business grows through a certain growth phase, you have to break everything and put it back together in a different way. So when there's 2 of you working in a business, it's great to work in one way. When there's 4 of you, you've got to reboot it. When there's 10, you've got to reboot it, and so on and so forth. So when you're going through high growth SaaS companies, how do you deal with that? How do you keep marketing integral to the decision making when the product teams maybe ballooned from 2 people to 20 people and they've all want to own different bits of the roadmap? Or how do you keep marketing integral to that?
So what you just described is literally step changing of a business, and most of the time you'll go from that 10-person mark to the 30-person mark, the 30-person mark to the 100-person mark, 1 to 150, etc., right? And as you go through this step change, what supports all of that is by building a strong foundation from the beginning. And that is what will support and allow you to continue to make those step changes. Now, I'm not saying that that won't come with some sort of growing pains, if you will. But I think if you've built a strong foundation, and dare I actually say this, your brand needs to very much be solid at that beginning stage, then you can continue to grow and you can continue to evolve with those step changes as your business grows and evolve. And again, in the same capacity, if you've built in the right mechanics and the right processes to allow marketing to be that feedback loop between your business and the outside world, then you have the capabilities of continually informing your product. So therefore, there should be an always on constant conversation happening between the two.
Brilliant. I often describe marketing as kind of the interface between the customer and the company. And that's, it's about the market. And if we're obsessed with customers, then we will be able to be that interface between the two. I'm going to ask a question about training of marketers. You came from a sales background. There's a lot of people working in marketing who have no formal training in marketing. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of maybe digital focus training or whatever. Do you think you're talking about, brand concepts and different stuff that happens in SaaS marketing? Do the people you work with, do they have the skills? Are you having to train them and make them forget things they've been taught? Or what's missing in training for you?
I would probably say, from a skills perspective, I think it really boils down to what your business needs. I think actually at the end of the day, this is kind of a bit of a problem, especially when you work in the startup world, such as I do, is that you can't approach it and say, well, this is what a traditional marketing organization looks like. So you over here need to have these skills. You over here need to have those skills. You over here need to have those skills. I mean, that is a perfect idealistic world, right? But it doesn't function like that. For me, the way that I've built my marketing teams is I've built piece by piece based off of what my business needs. And so I think that at the end of the day, going back to what I originally said when we were talking about recruitment, is that if you're hiring people that are flexible and they're adaptable and they're willing to learn new skill sets, then you'll actually be okay. Because, if let's say you've got a brilliant content marketer, but all of a sudden you've grown this massive database. Now you need to really start thinking about how you structure your email marketing program. Actually, can that person, since they're already writing the content that's going to sit inside of that email, are they willing to learn a new platform to actually help hit send on those emails as well? So, being flexible and adapting, I think, for me, more than anything, the skill that I find to be slightly lacking is kind of business etiquette, if you want to say. So just basic fundamental understandings of the interworkings of a business as opposed to the actual craft of marketing.
Yes. I mean, I rave rants. I get quite annoyed as well about marketers who don't understand what makes businesses live or die. And I think maybe in a SaaS world you get away with that because people very quickly have to learn about monthly recurring revenue or whatever the key metrics are. But in so many other businesses, they're obsessed with metrics that just don't matter. And they're like, go into the board. Yeah, vanity metrics. Like, go into the board and ask them what they care about: sales, revenue, margin, turnover. Widgets sold. Nobody cares about the things that we obsess over. So stop obsessing over it and start worrying about what the board are worrying about, and you'll get more budget and better decision making and so on.
I did a presentation where I actually ranted about that exact thing, is how do you speak the language of your executive leadership board in order to get buy-in for more resource and more budget on your marketing team. I was explicitly kind of speaking to SEOs, if you will, but I think the same principles apply, right? No matter what type of a marketer you are, if you're going to your board, your executive leadership team, and you're talking to them about Twitter followers, and you're talking to them about these campaigns that you're running with these great brand stories and things like this, they're going to look at you and they're absolutely going to ask you, well, how much money is that going to make me?
Yeah.
That is the question at the end of the day that they are going to ask.
Yeah.
And it's always going to boil down to revenue. It's always going to boil down to metrics that are growth metrics for that business, not the particular metrics that you're obsessing about over, or the beautiful brand stories or the beautiful creative imagery that you've come up with. They want to know, how is that going to impact the bottom line?
Yeah. And T.I.P.I, I talk about metric. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I was just talking about metrics almost as a pyramid. And if something near the top of that doesn't have a currency sign before it, whether it's pounds, dollars, euros, if you don't have one of them somewhere near the top of the pyramid, everything else below is bullshit, right? Just start with that one at the top and then work out. Because some of the metrics we're talking about are important for supporting that. Or we need to get so many here to get so many there to get so many there to hit that. But if you just have those, you're shooting into the dark. You're wasting your time.
Well, also too, it's an age-old conversation as well, and I think that this conversation potentially could have originated in marketing, where you have to understand who the audience is that you're speaking to. So, me to you as a marketer, if I explain to you kind of like the growth of my social engagement, and I talk to you about the growth of my traffic on site and my conversion metrics and that type of thing, you 100% understand immediately what I'm talking about. But if I come and try to have that same conversation with the chairman of my board, he's going to glass over and he's going to completely not understand anything I'm saying. He's probably going to stop listening to me within like 0.02 seconds, right? So therefore, I have to be mindful of who my target audience is and actually what terminology resonates for them and actually what is of interest to them, what's the job that they're trying to do, and how can I translate what I want or what I'm doing into terms that resonate with them.
Absolutely. I'll have to remember who it was, and I'll post it in the show notes because I'm going to steal a thunder, and I can't remember who it was said at a conference. Treat your reports like marketing material. So whenever you're writing a report, whether it's for the board or for a client or whoever it is, it's not a report, it's a piece of marketing material. And if you think of it in those terms, you start to think of target market, which changes your language, and I was like, of course.
Yeah. So, it's a brilliant analogy, and I am recalling sitting in the audience for that same session and have no clue who it was.
And do you know what? As soon as I remember who it is, I know she'll get in touch and absolutely batter me around the head, but it will come back to me at some point. So apologies for that, but it'll go in the show notes too. So just to wrap up, you read a lot, so I believe, and you get through a lot of books. I want to ask for some recommendations for people who are listening, and I want to kind of segment the recommendations a little bit. So I know that I have a good chunk of my audience are fairly junior marketers, maybe just out of university, kind of 22 to 26, that sort of age group who are looking to build a career in marketing. So a recommendation of a book for them. You've referenced in some of your blog posts sort of recommendations for women in leadership. So I don't know if you want to dig into something for that. And then just generally kind of an overall business book that you'd recommend for people.
Oh, boy. Wow. From a marketing perspective, what I would maybe suggest to read is The Human Brand.
Mm-hmm.
So basically building a brand and building a business that people become emotionally attached to, and how you go about doing that.
Yeah.
Again, as we talked about the importance of brands, and it impacts so many other areas of your business, not just marketing. Yeah, women in leadership books. There's a fantastic one that I just actually read at the beginning of March called Nevertheless, She Persisted. And it actually breaks down, I think it's 18 or 20 different stories of women in tech who kind of detail out what their individual journeys were in order to become the high flying and super successful executive leader or business owner that they are today.
Mm-hmm.
Very inspiring, very powerful. And then obviously I can't talk about women's empowerment books without talking about Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. It is, I mean, it's the Bible. She literally wrote the book on women's empowerment for women in the workforce. And then business in general. I mean, literally, I have a laundry list. As a matter of fact, I promised Ross Simmons that I would actually send him this list, and I've yet to get around it. There's a couple that I've read recently that I'm hyper obsessed with. So Setting the Table by Danny Meyer. It sounds a little bit strange because Danny Meyer is the founder and CEO of Union Square Hospitality Group. So he owns restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
But his approach to making sure that you leave your customer having the most optimal positive experience with your brands is I loved it. I picked it up one Saturday afternoon and I just flew right through it. Another one that I became really, really obsessed with was Howard Schultz's Pour Your Heart Into It. It's basically how he built Starbucks as we know it today. But the powerful message in that for me is less actually about kind of the external brand and that type of thing. But my big takeaway was how he treated his employees. It's one of my favorite Richard Branson quotes is, don't worry about your clients. Take care of your staff or your employees, and they will take care of your clients.
Yeah.
So that was a really powerful one. And then What You Do Is Who You Are by Ben Horowitz. Anyone who's read Ben Horowitz's The Hard Thing About Hard Things will know that he has this beautiful abilities of incorporating hip hop lyrics into his books, and he's done it again with that. But again, it's about building something that is who you are, and it's the fabric of what you stand for as a person, but more so as a business and as a culture, and how you can leverage that to propel your business forward.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant.
More if you want more.
No, we'll. I'll put all those links again in the show notes if you want to dive in and get them. I'll get links to the books, and obviously Jen's contact details will be there. So if you do want any books, do get in touch with her, as well as to talk about any of the issues that we've covered today. One last question, which is probably the vaguest question I've got. What one thing should I have asked you that I didn't?
Oh my gosh, the one thing you should have asked me that you didn't. Well, the one question that everyone keeps asking me that literally people are dying to know the answer to is, what am I doing now that I've resigned from my previous role?
Go on then, tell us. I think I might know, but go on, tell us.
There's been a lot of speculation about, will I move into another SaaS platform predominantly in the search marketing space, or will I just become a consultant, or will I start up my own agency? However, I completely am throwing everyone a curveball. I have become the vice president of marketing for a new fintech platform that is setting out to revolutionize the way that payment infrastructures work. It's called Banked, which is literally just launched out of beta. So getting ready to take the world by storm. So everything we've talked about today effectively about building SaaS marketing and building SaaS businesses. I'm going back to the beginning and doing it all over again in the fintech world.
Brilliant stuff. And VC-backed company again, is it? Or, that sort of fast growth, hyper, fun all the way, hard work all the way?
Yeah, exactly. Hyper fast growth. Obviously, fintech is just a market that is absolutely exploding right now with the new banking regulations around open banking. It originated here in Europe. It's now starting to spread into the likes of APAC with Australia, and there's now sort of rumblings happening in the US. I mean, the payments industry is 3 trillion, is what the estimation is for 2022. So we are trying to capitalize on a bit of that pie, which means literally right now building all of that strong infrastructure to do so.
$3 trillion. Wow, massive. Jen Hoffman, amazing, amazing. Jen Hoffman, thank you very much for taking part in the show. It's been brilliant to have you on. All the notes that we've mentioned, all the links and things will be in the show notes below. And do please reach out to Jen on social. Again, our links are somewhere around where you're listening or watching. But please do reach out to Jen. She's great on social media and good fun. Jen, thank you very much again for being part of this.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Wow. Well, what a way to start the show. Yeah, Jen Hoffman there. So I think there's been a couple of really important things that we talked about then. The most important thing, I think, starts from the Scarlet Letter blog that she wrote. If you haven't read the blog, please do go and read it. Search it out. Just Google Scarlet Letter, Jen Hoffman, or there's a link in the show notes. Find it from there and go and have a read of it. Some really, really important things there about finding the right people and really valuing people for what they bring to your business, instead of looking at traits and going, oh, well, when a guy exhibits those traits, it's fantastic, and when a female exhibits those traits, it's terrible. Yeah, just a real difficult place I find difficult to get my head around. But I think it's an important discussion to have, not just in marketing, but in organizations generally. So please do dig into that blog post, and feel free to get in touch with Jen or get in touch with me if you want me to put you in touch with Jen to talk about it further if you do, because I think it's important that we do that. Moving forward, Jenny's sort of moving out of the SEO world, which is where I first met her, into the trillion-dollar payments industry, which is a little bit bigger than SEO, and I'm sure she'll do brilliantly well there, because as you can tell from the discussion, knows exactly what she's talking about. I think one of the key lessons I think marketers should take from that is to really focus on the commercials. As a SaaS marketer, she is focused always on monthly recurring revenue or annually recurring revenue. And I think too many marketers get caught up in the pretty stuff and in the shiny stuff. We're looking at the creative too much, and we want to launch something because it's pretty, and we spend too long in some places designing stuff on Canva when we could get somebody else to do it, when actually what we really should be focusing on is the commercials and the numbers. You need to do both. Creative numbers without creative is pointless. But I think we probably need to reset the way that that arrow points to a little bit more towards the commercial and towards the numbers, which is one of the key lessons I would take from that. Also, yeah, I never thought I'd launch a podcast and drop the N-bomb, and certainly not in the first episode, but there you have it. Such is life. It's already out there. Anyway, moving on. So as is the nature of this podcast, a marketing mixtape, if you will, the 3-section structure. So we've had Jen doing an interview, and next I want to talk to you about TikTok. Not just TikTok as such, it's about all social media. In fact, it's about any channel. It's how do you decide if you're going to launch a new channel. TikTok in the last couple of weeks has hit a couple of billion downloads, 2 billion downloads, which, just think about it for a minute, is a phenomenal number. Driven, yes, by lockdown, by people being bored, by couples in the kitchen having a dance and trying to tap the way around. Yes, I'm talking to you, and yes, you should stop it. But the downloads have been driven. You know, next time you have your marketing meeting, someone is going to pipe up, we should be on TikTok. And this is how you decide if that's a good idea or a bad idea. This week, I want to talk to you about your arms. We're in lockdown at the moment, and it seems that everyone who is in a couple, isolating as a couple, and over the age of about 30 has suddenly discovered that TikTok is a thing. And because TikTok is now a thing in their life, you can smell and you know the conversations that are about to start happening in marketing teams up and down the land. We should have TikTok as part of our marketing strategy. What? Yeah, we got to be on TikTok, right? Because everybody's doing it. I'm doing it. Me and my mates are doing it. We're all doing different TikTok dances. I've got like 30 or 40,000 views on my videos, and it's great. We've got to be doing it as an organization. Now, just to be clear, I'm not bagging TikTok. It looks great fun. I haven't dived in yet. I have no idea how it works, but I'm sure for some people it's working really, really well. And for other companies, they probably shouldn't be anywhere near it. I don't care. It's not really about TikTok that I'm talking about. It's about how do you choose a new channel for your company's marketing. I'm old enough to remember when Facebook was new, when Twitter was new, MySpace was new, Vine, remember that one? Snapchat, Instagram. They've all come, some have stuck, some have gone. It doesn't really matter, right? You can use what I'm about to talk to you about your arms to decide if you should launch a new channel, regardless of what the channel is, right? It's about understanding how you can make that decision for your organization. So if you're in marketing and people are asking you, should we launch a new channel? Or if you run a business and you're thinking, why are we on this channel? Or should we launch on this channel? Here's how you can go about making that decision. And as I said right at the beginning, I'm going to talk to you about your ARM. That stands for audience, resource, and metrics. And it's 3 simple questions, simple-ish, that will help you decide if you should launch on a new channel, right? And here goes. So let's start first, audience. Ask this question first. Is your audience on TikTok or any channel, right? Whichever channel it is you're looking at, is your audience on this channel? Now, there is a pre-step to this, is that you really, really, really have to know who your audience is. Who are you selling to? Who is it who buys your product? Who are you trying to reach? You can stop laughing at the back too, because I know from working with a number of companies that not everybody knows this, right? But if you do know it, you're going to have to know this to stand a fighting chance of doing anything. So if you don't know this, you need to go back to square one and start and do that. But assuming you know who your audience is, are they on that channel? Because if they're not, just stop. Go and do something else. Anything else. Hit yourself in the head, bang your head against the wall. Anything else will be more use than launching on TikTok or launching on any channel for that matter if your audience isn't there. You might as well just open the window and go and scream out of the window and hope for the best, because that is all you're doing effectively. So is your audience there? If they are there, then you can move on to the next question, which is, do you have the resource to bring this to life? Now, this is really important because resource can mean different things, right? Resource can mean time, it can mean money, it can mean skills. So have you got the resources to do it in-house, to do it justice? No? Is it still important? What about, do you have the budget to outsource it? Do you have the training budget to get the team upskilled so that you can do that? That's all resource. Have you got the resource to bring this to life? Now, one of the big mistakes people make when they look at this resource question is they look at what they've got in front of them and go, right, we haven't got the time, or we haven't got the money, or we haven't got the skills, so we're just not going to go on the channel. And that's not what we're looking at with resource, right? Resource is finite. Time is finite. Money's finite. There's never enough of it, right? You never walk into a marketing team and say, have you got enough time? Oh, we've got loads of time, Andy. We're not busy. We just, we sat here doing nothing and we're looking for stuff to do to fill our time. Never happens. Or we've got all the money in the world. We can't spend it. Well, maybe some public sector places, but that's a different discussion for a different day. Most of the time, you've got to make a decision. You've got to decide what it is that you're going to do. So this isn't just, do you have the time to launch on TikTok, or do you have the money to launch on TikTok? What this is what are you going to kill to allow you to do it if it is important for your audience? And if you look at the word decide, the suffix side comes from the Latin cida, which means to kill. Pesticide, regicide, homicide, suicide. The suffix side means to kill. So if you've got to decide something, you have to kill something. Now, a note, Your Honour, for file. I'm not talking about killing people. I'm talking about killing things. Time. What are you going to kill to allow you the time and the energy to focus on launching on TikTok? What are you going to kill to give you the budget to be able to invest in TikTok? Now, you have to look at this in the round and look at everything and go, where are we going to free this time up? Because often what happens is when people are looking for budget savings, especially budget savings, they never look at performance marketing, or rarely do. They look at kind of, the softer top of funnel stuff, brand awareness stuff. Let's kill all that and we'll invest it in TikTok or whatever. But actually, you should look at your performance marketing channels, Google ads, Facebook ads, and have a look at those. Just because they give you all the really easy metrics, the return on advertising spend and cost per clicks and click-through rates, and they give you all that metrics right up front. It's really easy to have a look and go, wow, this is working, let's just leave it. But can you find efficiencies? If you're spending thousands or tens of thousands a month, hundreds of thousands in some cases a month, there has to be efficiencies in that account. There has to be areas that aren't working, budget that you can pull back on without impacting what's going on in the bottom line. Now, I'm not saying, without looking at the facts and the figures, I really don't know. But what I'm saying is look across all your marketing activity. You're looking for efficiencies to allow you more time and more money to invest in this new channel. And if it's right for the audience, first question, then you do need to find the resource for it, then look at everything. Don't just look at the easy places to kill. Look at it in the round. So if you've decided now that you've got the audience on the channel that you're looking for, and then you've decided you can find the resources or you've got the resources, then you have to move on to the third question, which is metrics. What does success look like launching this channel? Why are you doing it, right? I mean, reasons I've heard over the last 10 years for launching on new channels have included, my daughter uses it. We'll look cool if we do it. And the opposite of that, we'll look a bit dated if we don't do it. One of our competitors is doing this. We should do it. I mean, all of these are reasons I've heard for launching on new channels, and all of them are utter shit, right? All of them. What I'm saying is that you have to have a good business reason that ties into the objectives of the company, that tells you what you want to do, and if it's going to help you achieve that. And if it's not going to help you achieve that, walk away. Why are you wasting your time? You have to be able to tie your activity back to what the company's doing. Now, in marketing, I get annoyed because people think marketing's just fluffy stuff. It's just about nonsense and, it's about pretty pictures, right? And that's because in marketing, we're scared about talking about objectives that have pound signs in front of them, or dollar signs or euro signs, right? We're worried about talking about that. But get comfortable with it, right? Because marketing isn't sales, but the end objective is selling stuff. And if we're not selling stuff, we're not doing our job properly. So how many units are you going to ship by being on this channel? What is the purpose of it? What is the overall objective? Now, some of you might be screaming there, but yeah, Andy, we're doing this for brand awareness. That's fine. But are you measuring brand awareness properly? And let me tell you that, so many views on the video, X number of likes on this post, that's not brand awareness. It's very, very, very soft metric for brand awareness. Right? If you want to look at brand awareness properly and you've got a research company with robust methodology measuring it for you, great. Let's hear that. But a lot of companies that I work with don't have that, big and small. So you can take a sequential look, a couple of years approach to this and say, right, year one, let's build an audience, right? We're going to hit 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 likes, users, subscribers, whatever the metric is. We're going to do that because in year two, we're going to monetize that and we're going to try and shift out X amount of goods to that audience. That's fine. Make sure you've got buy-in across the organization for that, because if you haven't, you might get killed after year one because there's no sales attributed to it. And then you just look stupid because year two, when you were going to sell, nothing's there. So make sure you get buy-in across the organization if you're going to go for long-term goals, right? But what's the point of it? So if you can answer those three questions sensibly, number one, is your audience on the channel? In this case, we're talking TikTok. Is your audience on TikTok? If the answer is yes, move on to question two. Have you got the resource to bring it to life? If the answer is yes, or you can kill something and free up the time through efficiencies to make that happen, then yeah, great. Move on to question three. What's the objective of what you're doing? What is the point of this new TikTok activity? How is it going to help your business achieve its overall objectives? And if you can answer those three questions sensibly, do it. Launch it. If you can't answer them sensibly, stop what you're doing. Do anything else but launch that channel. Anything. Literally anything. So there you have it. Use your arms and find out if you should be launching a new social media channel. If you want to find out more about that, visit the XMO Marketing website. That's xmomarketingstrategy.com, and have a look at the blog section. I've written a post there that goes into all of that stuff in a little bit more detail. Audience, resource, measurement. If you've got those three things, crack on. So Would be really interested in hearing what you think about that. Is that the sort of, do you have a process? Do you have a framework that you use before launching a new channel? Do you just dive headlong in and go, stuff it, we're going to be on TikTok because billions of people are using it? Really interested to hear what your thoughts are. Please do get in touch on social. Andy Jarvis is where I am on Twitter, Andy with an I. So please do reach out. Be interested to hear if you think that's rubbish or if you think it's something you can take ahead and use. So now we're moving in to the part of the show I like to call the T.O.P.T.I.P. Or we could just call it top tips. I don't know. I'm going to keep trying with it. T.O.P.T.I.P. Top tip. Maybe even try and come up with a little jingle for that. I think I could get T-I-P-T-O-P. 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 I'm getting a look by my daughter who stood just off camera here that is telling me no, I should never ever do that again. Anyway, regardless of what it is, we've got a top tip here. Every show I'm going to be bringing in some outside expertise. I am lucky enough to know some of the best marketers anywhere on the planet. I'm not one of them. They are. They're the experts who know what they're talking about. And I've got some of them to send as 60-second top tips that will help you improve your marketing. Some of them are going to be about SEO. We've got Facebook ads, email marketing. We're going to have PPC, PR, a different tip every week from a different expert that's going to be actionable, something you can just pick up and go, all right, I can introduce that into my marketing and make it a little bit better. So I'm super pleased today to have Arpun Bhuhi from Distilled on as today's first T.I.P.T.O.P. person. If you don't know about Distilled, they've recently merged with BrainLabs to form something of a monster agency. Distilled are also behind the Search Love Conference. Hello, everyone at Distilled. I'm a big fan. And they have a really scientific approach to SEO, real big agency that works on big projects and does really, really great work. So I'm really pleased to have Arpun here today to be able to share some knowledge on content with us.
Hi, my name's Arpun and I'm an SEO consultant at Distilled, now BrainLabs, and my top tip is for any site that's looking to build out their SEO strategy. So my top tip is to incorporate content and SEO together from the get-go. If you think back to the marketing funnel, your SEO strategy should aim to hit each of those sections, right from awareness to action. And for awareness, I'm recommending evergreen content. So this is content that is long-lasting, doesn't have an expiry date, is related to the brand or the industry, and isn't a hard sell. The idea being it's long-lasting, will always bring traffic and awareness to your site. So I'd use tools such as Ahrefs to find relevant keywords and search volumes and incorporate those into your content. I'd also use Google Trends to see if there's any seasonality with that content and use that to schedule and publish. And hopefully, in incorporating SEO and content together, you're raising the chances of people finding your content, building awareness, and hopefully one day converting. You can read a whole lot more about this on Distilled.net. Thank you.
Arpun, thank you very much for that top tip, or the T.O.P.T.I.P. If you want to reach her on Twitter, you can find her at ARPUNBHUHI, Arpun Bhuhi, and you'll find her there. Always worth a chat with people from Distilled. Get in touch. You always learn quite a lot, so definitely worth a follow. So we're coming towards the end of the show. Before I wrap up with a few thank yous, I just want to talk to you about a product that I'm offering at the moment, which is a Strategy Sprint. Obviously, the world's changed a little bit in the last couple of weeks and months for everybody, and running workshops and being in front of people isn't always possible. In fact, it's not possible at the minute because we're still in lockdown. But that doesn't mean that your marketing has to stop. And you may have found that COVID changed everything for your marketing plan, or you might be relatively new in post and you've got somebody else's plan that you think stinks a little bit. You might not be able to say that, but maybe that's what you think. And also then there is maybe just the problem of maybe just the plan's not working, you're not quite sure why. If that sounds like you and you want a little bit of assistance with that, I'm running a new remote sprint product. It's a 5-day product. It's an hour a day on a video call with whoever's necessary from your team to make that happen. And we're going to pull your plan apart in a structured way using an academically developed process. And we're going to have a look to try and find out where it's not working and put it back together to make it improve and to look for that incremental value for you. Now, I've tested this with a company already. I'm looking for 3 different companies to be able to take it to the next step with. I'm looking for a big company with over 200 people. I think I've found that company, but if you are one of those, please get in touch. I'm looking for a multi-site organization. somebody who's doesn't have to be different countries, could be all in one country with multiple sites. And I'm looking for a medium-sized company, kind of 20 to 50 employees, turnover 5 to 10 million-ish. You could be a little bit above or below them, but please do get in touch. Have a look at the Eximo website, eximomarketingstrategy.com/sprint for full information about that. But if that sounds like something you're interested in, please do get in touch. Thus ends the sale message. That is it. That is episode 1 of the strategy sessions done and dusted for today. Thank you for listening. Thanks for staying with me all the way to the end. Before you go, I've got a couple of thank yous that I would like to get out. I'm here with my daughter Kira.
Yo.
To help me with that. So, a couple of thank yous. Who have we got first?
Nico Fell and Ed Simpson.
Those two boys have been part of my idea development phase. They've been involved in trials and tests, and I don't think we'd have got to where we are without them.
And Kat Luke.
Kat Luke is the missus. She has been tortured endlessly with me bouncing ideas about this offer and shouting out and going, what about this and what about that? And I think she's bored of it already, but thank you very much, Kat. I'd also like to thank Aaron Abernethy, the Ronster, who has done most of the technical work behind the scenes to bring this to life. If you are thinking of launching a podcast, reach out and I'll put you in touch with the Ronster. He's an absolute legend for this. Gaynor Gordon, GG, has done most of the artwork for the show, so if you think it looks cool, that's got nothing to do with me. It's all down to GG. And then, of course, the show wouldn't be anything if it wasn't for the guests. Jen Hoffman was brilliant and just a great way to start the show. I'm so happy to have her on. And for Arpun as well, who's given up a time to put that 60-second top tip together. If you want to know anything else about the show, please do get in touch. It's Andy Jarvis, Andy with an I, ANDIJARVIS. You'll find me anywhere on social, just looking for that. Twitter, LinkedIn's probably the best place to find me. And if all else fails, go to eximomarketingstrategy.com where you'll be able to get me from there. Thank you for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time with another great strategy sessions.